Good afternoon. You're listening to My Conscious Dad on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. I'm your host, Jasmine Urbina, here in the studio today with my dad and co-host, Alex Urbina. And today our show is called Stop Trying to Change Others and Let Them Be. What do you have to say about that?
Well, I think first of all, when it comes to parenting, a lot of times parents, get frustrated because they can't figure out how to get their kids show up in a certain way that they see them. They see their greatness, and they can't figure out, how to draw that out of them or how to make that kind of impact in their kids so that their kids can see the value of making those choices that their parents, think that they should make for themselves. And a lot of times when I sit with clients of mine that are parents and struggling with their kids, a lot of times what it really boils down to is that they're really trying to change the way their kids are showing up in their life. And for me, I call it like a package that we have as a parent, and that little package is like a bag of certain things that kind of keep you from really learning how to inspire and empower your kids. And so the three things that I've really identified in that package is, one is that we want the best for our kids, and then with wanting the best for our kids, we have some fears. And then with those fears, we try to control our kids. And so those three components in that package really actually has the results that we're looking for not show up. And that's when we're frustrated.
Yeah, and I think as a kid, having your parents, one, controlling you because they want the best for you, and that shows up more than the fear side. So we see you guys trying to control us and be like you or do whatever you want, and not enough times do we see the fear side, or do we experience the place where you're coming from of being afraid, which I think would be a little bit better for us to know, because then we can have compassion towards that and we can understand that, because we know what it's like to be afraid.
Yeah, but you can't see that because the parents can't see it. And the fear is transparent. The fear doesn't show up like, okay, son, okay, this is, it doesn't show us, it's not obvious. The fear is the things that it's the work that I do with the parents that has the parents have that first aha moment to realize that there is some fear in their parenting style. And it's identifying that transparent fear that you have, that huge awakening, that moment of clarity where you go, oh my God, I can't believe that everything about my parenting style is all fear-based. And once you have that realization and you really get a deep, honest look at that, is when you start to have that wake-up call. And that's when you become a little bit more conscious, a little bit more aware, and then you start that journey of conscious parenting where you can actually see the fear-based choices you're making and then cause a shift and start learning how to ask open-ended questions, how to learn how to draw out the answers from your kids rather than trying to tell them what to do or what you think the best solution is for them.
Yeah, and as far as identifying that fear, what do you think it kind of looks like for parents if they want to say, yeah, I am afraid, but afraid of what?
Well, you got to look at, let's take one scenario, for example. The one thing that as a parent, we all have scenarios. So if I ask you, give me a scenario of one of the things that you're frustrated with your son or daughter, and each parent will come up with a specific scenario. And then what I'll ask them to do is, after they tell me what that scenario is, I will ask them, I want you to complete the sentence. The reason why I don't like little Johnny doing what he does is because I'm afraid that. And then I'll put ... Now I need you to complete, what is that? What are you afraid of? What's the fear? And then when you get honest and you really look at yourself, and this is a challenge, this right here, this solution and this process, that sometimes it takes me 3 or 4 or 5 different sessions to get a parent to really be honest to answer that question. But when you finally do get honest, and answer that question, it'll sound like, what I'm afraid most is that little Johnny's going to hear that I'm advocating his decision when I'm really not. And when you finally get honest with, I'm afraid that he's going to hear, yes, I support that, or I'm afraid that he's going to hurt himself, or I'm afraid that he's going to make the wrong decision, or I'm afraid that, once you start to really practice the art form of looking at what are my fears and really kind of diving underneath there, is when you start to realize that you've been making these decisions and choices and parenting from fear all unconsciously. And then you open up this whole new world of possibilities for you to actually change some of that. But prior to that, you don't realize that you're doing it. It's just what you've been doing for since day one.
Yeah, and as far as the scenario where you said parents are afraid that they're going to hear it as a yes or advocating for them, I think that's very common in parents who are more open and they're trying to be more open, so they say, okay, I could see how you see that, and but this is what I think. And there's a very, I guess, there's a line where you can't really tell, or as a kid, I'm sorry, when I say you, we can't really tell what it is you're trying to say, and that could be kind of confusing. I think if you throw in that extra but or the extra or, and then you follow with what you think, now it's on us. It's not on you, so you don't have to feel like we're going to think you're saying yes.
No, I like that. I think that, and that takes a conscious commitment to learn how to communicate effectively. And a lot of times, when I'm sitting with parents, I'll teach them how to articulate what it is that they really want to say so that their kids go, oh, okay, mom's starting to speak differently. Dad's instructions are starting to sound in a different way. So a lot of times what it would sound like is, hey, Tim, I think that your decision is your decision. If I were to have some input in it, or if I can influence or inspire you to see a different way, this is how I would do it, or this is the thing that I can see that maybe you can't. And then after I let them know that obviously I can't make that decision for them, and then obviously after I give them my advice or my perspective, then at the back end what I would do is I would give a little clause, and I would say, these are my concerns as a parent. This is what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that you're going to do this. I'm afraid that it's going to end up like that for you. But you know what, son? Those are my fears, not yours. Don't let me project my fears onto you. You have some choices to make. It's your life. Go make them. Just know that when you make them, they all come with a consequence. And I think that's the magic ingredient underneath being a conscious parent, is knowing that your kid's journey is their journey. And as much as you don't want them to make mistakes, as much as you don't want them to fall and fail or hurt themselves, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's their journey. So you're either going to frustrate them and get them mad because you're trying to control it. Doesn't matter how much you love them and how much you want to save them misery. It's still their life. It's still their journey. The trick is how do I do it in a way that's empowering rather than frustrating my son or daughter to where I don't have their ear anymore. I can't be there as their advisor anymore. They don't listen to me anymore.
Yeah, we always say that parents have, this great influence on their kids, and the reason your kids turn out the way that they do is because of you as a parent. And I think when you're pushing them in a way that's controlling, and like you said, it frustrates them, you're getting the results that you're giving. So if you want them to kind of, I guess, be well-rounded kids and have a good life and do all the things that you want, and you're not seeing it, it's because you're not being it, or you're not, I guess, projecting it on them in the, I don't want to say correct way, but in the best possible way.
Yeah, the more effective way. We don't want to look at right or wrong in parenting. You don't want to look at this is the best way versus not the best way. We want to look at how effective am I. That's what you want to look at as a parent. And then you have to look at, if you're going to base your results as how effective am I, you got to look at the results. The results tell you everything. Is my son or daughter, are they open? Are they honest? Are they, do they experience their emotions in a healthy way? Do they open up to me? Do they share? Do they seek out my advice when they're nervous or afraid? Or you really got to look at those. And if you're taking an account of the results for you as a parent, and they're a little bit off, you got to ask yourself, what's missing in me? Who do I need to be? Who do I need to shift into so that my son or daughter feels safe enough and trusts me and seeks out my advice because I'm an asset to them. I'm a tool for them. They've decided that I can support them in the best way possible.
Yeah, and another thing, while you were talking, I was kind of thinking, a lot of people parent the way that their parents parented, and maybe like a little bit different, but that's okay, I think, as long as it's working. Like you said, you see the results, or it's effective. But as soon as you notice it's not effective anymore, that's when it's time to reinvent yourself, which is very difficult or very challenging, I've noticed, for a lot of parents. And that's like their feedback, or that's their, I guess, issue, or their thing is, I don't know how to reinvent myself. And we've talked about this before a lot, about parents reinventing themselves. And I think the hard part is not necessarily the reinventing, but admitting to yourself that this isn't working anymore. Now what do I do?
Yeah, that's the part I think that people get stuck, is finally just throwing up your hands, going, okay, I don't have this dialed down. I don't have all the answers. Maybe it would benefit me to open myself up and learn. Maybe I should challenge my belief system. Maybe I should look at some of my morals and principles, and then really look at that, or be open to the possibility that maybe my values and principles aren't dialed in the way that they should be. And then, so it really takes a deep, honest look as a parent. If you want your kids to win, and you want to live as a conscious parent and growing and constantly, challenging yourself and learning how to reinvent yourself. I personally believe that as a parent, you should always be reinventing yourself. You never get there. Like, as much as work have I done on myself, I'm never there. In fact, every time I think I get there and I look up, there's more growth for me to go. So it's not about getting to the end. It's about the journey, and life is always evolving. So every new moment is a new challenge. And so all I'm doing is learning how to pick up these tools to put in my tool belt, so that I have more tools in my tool belt than the average person. So in every new scenario that comes at me, I can go, all right, let's take my tool belt off, set it down, and start looking through the thousands of tools that I have to see what's going to be the best 5 tools to handle this situation. But if you're a parent, you pull your tool belt off and you got the same 4 tools that you've been working since the 80s or 90s, you might not be able to create an effective result with those tools. They might be dull, they might be rusty, they might even be outdated.
Yeah, what I was gonna say was, it is, I guess, to be an effective parent in my eyes would be that moment where you stop and you look at all the tools in your tool belt, and you say, okay, which one am I going to use? Because there's, I guess, the gap between what happens and how you react to it, and how you
absolutely. What's funny is, as you were saying that, I had this visual of a parent. It was actually a dad. So I got a visual of this dad, and he's working on a project, and he's got a hammer in his tool belt, and it's an old hammer, probably from the 1940s. Those little small dinky ones. You're like, how'd you ever hammer anything with that little dinky hammer? It's a hammer. It's all rusty, but he's got it there, and he probably hasn't used it for a while. And he's working on a project, and he's got this wood project, and he's hammering these nails in with a rock. And you're standing there, and he's frustrated, and he's like, this is taking me too long, I want to give up on the project. And as he's frustrated and he's venting to you, you're looking down at his tool belt, and you see a hammer in his tool belt. And there's a part of you that's like, it's like, does he not know he has a tool belt? Has he not used it? Has he not seen it? And then for you to point out to him, hey, buddy, I don't know if you knew this or not, but there's a great tool you have in your tool belt. It's called a hammer. And if you pull that out and use that versus using the rocks, you could probably be a little more effective in what you're doing. And the epiphany, the awareness, the, oh my God, the awe and shock and awe in his face when he realizes that he's had a tool in his tool belt that can help him, and could have helped him years ago, and to be more effective, and never realizing it was there. I think that's what this is all about. It's about you realizing that there could be some fundamental tools and things that you have about you that's so incredibly important that you don't realize that are there. But what if you can learn how to notice them? What if somebody can show you that they're there, that you can actually grab and use, and once you use them, you start to become more effective in your parenting?
Yeah, that would save a lot of time and frustration on both ends, the kids and the parents. There's a lot of, I guess, I know a lot of people take their frustrations out differently. Some kids don't say anything, and some kids are just frustrated, I guess, internally, and they act normal. And I think that is also, too, an unhealthy way to be frustrated, or and I don't want to say an unhealthy way to parent, but how do you deal with a kid who doesn't have the tools, I guess, to express themselves and say, hey, you know what, I don't like the way you're treating me or parenting or
Well,
so
first
on.
of all, anytime you ask me a question about a child not having the tools, the first thing I think of is the reason why that child doesn't have those tools is because I, as the parent, haven't taught them how.
So maybe
So every
the parent
time,
doesn't have those tools either.
every time you get frustrated, let's talk about you and me. Every time you get frustrated or say something at me, or I have to really sit with that, and the unconscious part of me wants to make you the bad one and make you the one that, I want to like go to my buddy and say, I can't believe Jasmine, and throw you under the bus. But at the end of the day, I got to look at myself and say, well, what part? I'm her dad. I should have taught her how to learn how to let her frustrations out in a healthy way, or learn how to get off them quicker, or learn how to shift her perspective so that they don't bother her in the first place. And so I have to start going through that and really realizing that if you're showing up that way, I haven't figured out how to teach you that, because that's my job. My job as a dad is to teach you how to master your life. My job is to figure out how to give you the tools so that you're not suffering in a major way. Now, don't get me wrong. I think suffer is great for everybody. There's a certain level of suffering we need to learn how to become magnificent and become extraordinary in our daily life. But suffering to the degree where you can't even pick up any momentum, you can't even get moving forward down the road, and that kind of suffering is pointless. Like there's no reason why our kids are suffering in a way that they're not progressing and evolving at a faster rate. To a certain point, I haven't figured out how to teach you those kinds of things. So when you ask me that question, it's very challenging for me to look from the perspective of, well, my son or daughter doesn't communicate to me. I'm always going to be the advocate for the kid. And that's a lot of times the reason why some people can't coach with me. Some parents or some adults, we're not a good match, because I'm always going to make the parent or the adult to take the responsible version of what's going on in their relationship. And some parents don't want to hear that. They want me to fix their kid. And they'll say, no, it's not me. My son needs the help. And it's like, yeah, I get your son needs the help, but it's going to have to go through you to your son. It cannot be you dropping your son off saying, here, fix my kid. Your kid is just a byproduct of some of the dysfunctions that you need to tighten up within yourself, within your mental, emotional, and spiritual being.
Yeah, and going back to the being frustrated part, I think, especially because you're talking about us, I think if you're a parent and you see your kid being frustrated or having a hard time with you, it's probably just a reflection of the way you act with them. I know with us, we both get frustrated the same way. It's like, it looks the same, it's just different versions. But
see, every time you get frustrated, and if I'm really present and I'm watching you, you're teaching me. You're a mirror of me when I get frustrated. So I need to look at that and go, wow, like the part that I want to help you get over that, I have to learn how to get over that faster so that I can be that mirror for you, so that you can go, oh, so that you can see me get off my stuff quicker, so you can see me learn how to shift or accept whatever's going on and embrace it and then move forward, so that I can teach you that. But I got to do it by example.
Right. So for parents who are listening, your kids became this way by watching you, and if you want to quote unquote fix them, you need to fix it or you, and they'll follow.
That's
again
right.
By example.
That's right. Exactly. So whatever the way your kids are showing up, they learn that from somebody. 90% of the time, they learned it probably from you. So all you got to do is cause that shift within yourself, and you'll start to notice your kids follow suit. They just start to adapt. They start to evolve right in front of your face. But only when you, the parent, decide I need to cause it within me first.
Yeah, and there's probably some people listening who are thinking, well, oh, my kid didn't learn that from me. They learned it from my husband or my wife, and you had a little bit to do with that too, because you chose that person to be your husband or your wife, and you chose to raise kids with that person. So I think it's really important to be on the same page with that. But how does a wife or a husband tell, and we'll get back to it after the break, but I'm going to ask the question, how does a husband or a wife tell their significant other, hey, you need to, change for our kid? And I don't know if that's the right wording, but we'll get back to it after the break. Stay tuned for more of My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.